Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, January 24th, 2022. If you'd please join us for the pledge.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I believe we're going to start this evening off with one of our favorite presentations of the entire year.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to introduce some of our outstanding JROTC students. And they're joined by the commander, Phil Sedan, and Dr. Lee Eversole, who is the director of our social emotional support department. And they're going to talk about this wonderful, wonderful opportunity for our students that's made possible by our generous community. I'll turn it over to Dr. Eversole.
Well, as we can clearly see, the entire corps, these marvelous young men and women, have truly stood as an example to all of us of generosity and kindness, and their ability to care for the most fortunate among us. And we are indeed enormously grateful for your example, as well as your contribution to our shoe and food fund. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Eversole. I'm a man of few words. I'm going to turn this over to our Cadet Corps Commander, Cadet Colonel Jessica Foose, because she and her team up here are the ones who really led this effort for this incredible and record-breaking collection this year. Jess?
Hi, I am the group commander this year. I'm Cadet Colonel Jessica Krause. Like Major said, this year was a record-breaking year. Not only did our cadets break our year's goal, they doubled it. They set a new record for our unit, and I'm extremely proud of them. And it was honestly amazing seeing them raise so much. Our top contributors for our upperclassmen and for our first years were able to make it here tonight, but I think it's only fair that we recognize them. For our upperclassmen, we have Jared Day. I believe he raised around 3,200 this year, 4,000. And then for our first year, we have Graceland Dodson. I'm unsure about her. About 1,200. So I'm extremely proud of them. Again, some they weren't able to make it here tonight, but I just want to recognize them. And again, I'm extremely proud of our unit, and I can't wait to see and hear about how much they raise next year.
Yeah, we are indeed grateful. Would you please join me in applauding this?
On three. 1, 2, 3. Warning community. 1, 2, 3.
Warning community.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Major Sedan,
Yes, ma'am.
what was the total this year?
63,000.
$783.36, and no dyed hair.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have the Deputy Superintendent of Operations update. Mrs. Joyce White.
Good evening, board members. This evening, I'll begin with the technology update. I have one update in the area of technology. And we've been quite busy providing everyone in the school district, as you know, with laptops for our one-to-one initiative. And we are currently doing that for our secretaries. And so over the next 2 weeks, we'll be distributing laptops to our secretaries so they have updated devices. Currently, they've been working on desktops. So they'll have some updated technology, which will make their jobs more efficient. In transportation, we know the transportation staff does an amazing job at transporting each and every student safely every day. But in times of quarantines and staff shortages, we've provided students with transportation every single day. And as you know, some districts have had problems doing so. We're very proud of that fact. We'll continue to do that. And on some days, in order to make that happen, we do have drivers who pitch in to do extra work so that we can accommodate every student. Because there have been changes, we want to make sure that we communicate out well and easily with students, staff, and parents what those changes are. So Jason, if you'll show the JCS bus status. Every morning and every afternoon, the transportation staff will be updating this document. It is updated in real time so that for every school, which is listed by school, schools are in alphabetical order, it lists the bus number and the status of that bus. Is it on time? Is it 15 minutes behind? And what the changes are in the last column, which is the description. We hope this will make us much more efficient in our communication and that people will readily go to it. It's available on the app as well as on the website. If you go to Jefferson County Schools menu and then departments, it's under transportation. Or you can download our app. For a maintenance update, I just want to give a huge thank you to all the maintenance workers and the custodians who literally chipped away at the ice last week after our storm. Their efforts were deeply appreciated. It's a lot of hard work, and they've not gone unnoticed. And finally, this evening, an update for bond projects. We have now entered the design development phase for our 2 new schools. The meetings will take place next week, our first meetings, with the education specification committees comprised of staff members from both schools. A meeting will take place at each school. We have our interior designer coming. She's bringing samples, lots of good ideas for input. So we'll be working with the architect to start off that phase. We expect that phase to wrap up and conclude by the end of March, when we'll be giving the SBA an update on phase 2. That concludes my update for this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I did see that video of the one custodian, I believe it was at Charlestown Middle School, chipping the ice. That was a tedious hard job. I mean, I think there was enough ice out there to sink the Titanic for crying out loud. So
Hopefully that's it.
well, we'll just make sure that next time we get an ice storm, it's 60 degrees and sunny the next day.
That would be helpful.
Okay,
That is it.
thank you, ma'am. All right. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held January 10th, 2022? Thank you, Mr. Cable. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the regular board minutes from January 10th, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, citizens' comments. First up this evening is going to be Judy York, followed by Joanne Curran. And just a reminder that your speaking time is limited to 3 minutes, and you're prohibited from making negative or derogatory comments using a name or position by which an individual can be identified. Comments may not be threatening, profane, vulgar, or abusive, or the speaker will be required to cease his or her comments.
All right, are you ready for P?
One moment, please.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Judy York. I'm a parent of 3 students in Jefferson County Schools. I want to take a moment to thank the diverse team of teachers and staff who were involved in the effort to review and propose a new curriculum in the last meeting for ELA. As a parent, I also want to thank the board for the opportunity to provide input into these decisions. Some of the hardest decisions I've had to make have been around my children's education. And I appreciate that you don't take these decisions lightly either. In the first year of the pandemic, we chose to homeschool our 2 youngest. One was in elementary school and one was in middle school at the time. And there were many factors that went into that decision, and it turned out to be the right one for us. In preparation for that, we reviewed many curricula, and we chose core knowledge as the bones for our program. We found that it promotes critical thinking, creative exploration, and diverse viewpoints, and offered us, as the parents turned teachers, comprehensive yet flexible teaching resources. Last week, I was excited to learn that Amplify, the ELA program being considered for K-8, is partnered with the Core Knowledge program. And one aspect we loved about this program is how it integrates subject matter. For instance, as my kids learned about the history of the Civil War and Western expansion, we also studied literature connected to these events like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the journals of Lewis and Clark, as well as Frederick Douglass's What to the Slave is the 4th of July, and Sojourner Truth's Aren't I a Woman, and Phyllis Wheatley's On Being Brought from Africa to America. We read Native American oral narratives and learned about the impacts Western expansion had on them, as well as the Native Hispanics and Chinese immigrants. Then in science, we learned about the geographic, atmospheric, and biodiversity across the same region. So in addition to subject matter integration, as I just explained, I appreciate that Amplify is committed to helping teachers craft rigorous learning experiences that reflect diverse histories, cultures, and identities. And instead of parroting memorized answers, it supports students in constructing, questioning, expanding, and strengthening knowledge of where they come from and who they are becoming. HMH's diversity statement, this is for high school, the high school program, expresses similar commitments. In addition to core math, science, social studies, and ELA, these are the skills our students need to be successful in their future. Less than 2 weeks ago, EDA Reports, who is an independent nonprofit curriculum reviewer, used their teacher-led evaluation process to give Amplify CKLA skills for grades K through 12 an all-green rating. It's the only all-green rating in the ELA foundational skills category. And all the other proposed materials, Amplify, CKLA, Amplify, and HMH into literature, which have been proposed, have received all green ratings. This is the top rating that can be received from ED Reports. So I'm excited to see where this program will take our students. And
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you. Next up is Joanne Curran, followed by Pam Hershey's.
Okay. I'm responding also to the Amplified ELA curriculum proposal. Question, why is this program on the table now? What's its purpose? What is it replacing? How much does it cost? Where's the money coming from? Was it ever communicated to the general public? Were parents notified through the schools? I haven't found any. Are there test schools, feedback from teachers? Can teachers feel free to give negative feedback? How can citizens give feedback after viewing? Will that even matter, or is it just a superficial formality? But my real concern is the content of Amplify. America is a grassroots country. Any changes coming from the top down always have financial agendas with strings. Amplify does make it kind of idiot-proof, though. You could get by with less teachers, Maybe even teachers' aides to monitor. Not sure that's the standard we want. However, digging deeper, I see agenda, bias, indoctrination, and social emotional engineering in its content. These are the things that get parents riled up, such as second graders comparing Hindu and Buddhist. Pretty heavy for 7-year-olds. There's plenty of other interesting stuff a second grader can learn about culture. Why introduce religion into beginner cultural studies unless your goal is further dividing children and parents, and also set the stage for further anti-Western bias? A 4th grade story is called The Good Lie. Now there's a title that catches a parent's eye. The storyline is odd and inappropriate for a co-ed group. A girl wets the bed at a slumber party. The BFF lies to the mom to make her friend feel better. It goes on and on about how this good lie changed her life forever. It was the best day of her life. So much is wrong with this story. Friends supporting friends is a normal moral, rather than friends lying for friends. Extrapolate that lesson into the future years and you've got bigger problems. And the story states a good lie is not like a real sin. You know, a story can just be a good story without social emotional indoctrination. At the Amplify presentation, a teacher mentioned addressing all the healing needed from the last few years. No, that's not part of ELA. And that's what makes parents distrust you, especially when you push stories like these. Very disturbing is that females are the main characters everywhere. Intentionally minimizing the male role in a dominant female world is an easy progression for more boys to want to be girls. Schools are largely run by woke females who literally wouldn't know how to describe a male without giving him their own female traits. And with so many cultural fatherless families, how about promoting strong male role models so boys can grow to be good husbands and fathers who, and I'm going to say it out loud, are protectors, providers, proud, courageous, willing to lay down their lives for their families. That is what is inside every little boy. These are the things school and woke society want to erase from his being. The SEL agenda.
Next up is Pam Hershey's, followed by Christopher Spies.
Oh, I'm not sure how something as simple as a speaking schedule got messed up, but I didn't sign up to speak tonight. How did that happen?
Pam Hershey's.
Right, I didn't sign up to speak tonight. How did that happen?
There was an email that came to you.
I'm sorry?
I received an
Okay.
email.
So you don't want to speak
You
this
didn't
evening?
receive an email from me, so who are you getting emails from?
Ma'am, do you want to speak this evening or not?
No, I want to know why my name's on here when I didn't sign up to speak.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Christopher
Can
Spies.
someone tell me that, or is there no answer to that?
Ma'am, I don't have an answer.
You don't have an answer.
Following Christopher Spies is Karen Buck.
Here, thank you. I apologize for my tire. I just came across the hall with the basketball game. Watching my nephew play the Muslim. So, thank you for the opportunity to address you again. Much has changed since I spoke to the Board of Education last year. School mask mandates have now been eliminated in neighboring Virginia by executive order, with some boards of education refusing to comply. Neighboring counties in West Virginia and Maryland have implemented metrics to meet that will cause elimination of face coverings in schools. Yet in our county, we still have not been, at least to my knowledge, shown any metrics that would eliminate face covering mandates. Across the ocean, the UK has completely eliminated all masks and vaccine passport mandates nationwide, citing the fact that the Omicron variant transmissibility is likely already peaked in the country. Speaking of which, the Omicron variant of COVID-19 has now become the dominant variant in the US. Omicron has been found to be more than 4 times as transmissible when compared to the Delta variant, and thankfully 90% less lethal. Also, some other good news, according to the CDC, COVID-related deaths among children less than 18 years of age has remained largely stagnant recently and remains under 750 over the 2+ years of the pandemic, making COVID less lethal to children than motor vehicle accidents, non-COVID pneumonia, drownings, and sadly suicide. There have been no COVID-related deaths in West Virginia children that are aged under 16, despite massive spikes in cases in both children and adults statewide, with 49 of the 55 counties in West Virginia being considered red under the DHHR metrics.
But based on recent numbers, it appears cases have peaked, and thankfully, there has been no concurrent rise in deaths statewide. Also, 70% of West Virginia adults have been vaccinated with an 86% vaccination rate, and elderly West Virginians 65 and older. Regarding masks, most health experts now agree that cloth masks are largely ineffective against the Omicron variant. As I'm sure you all are aware, the vast majority of children in our schools wear decorative or fashionable cloth masks. I'll venture to say most of us here tonight are wearing cloth masks. These masks are essentially akin to not wearing a mask at all when we're considering the transmissibility of the Omicron variant. And despite the continued mask mandate at our schools, we have achieved the highest transmission and case rates of the pandemic overall. But as I stated earlier, the Omicron variant appears to be much less lethal than the prior strains. And also, despite the mask mandates, children are continuing to be required to quarantine with exposure, sometimes even with asymptomatic exposures. So even the original intent of the mask mandate to prevent a child's time away from in-person learning due to exposure has been an unmitigated failure. The mask mandate in general has been an unmitigated failure. It is time for the Board of Education to stop devaluing our children, enforce face coverings in our least vulnerable population, and stand up to the anti-scientific crowd screaming for masks in the midst of a now endemic virus. Allow parents the choice to choose to mask their children or not, and step back within the boundaries of your duties as a Board of Education.
Appreciate you wouldn't mute me this time.
Can you turn the Zoom volume on so people who are watching on Zoom can hear?
It should be on.
It's muffled.
They can't hear anything.
Yeah, very muffled.
Tell me when.
Whenever you're ready.
Karen Butler, if you only had 106 days to finish your work, would you work faster? In the last 2 weeks, we've had COVID testing in schools and the atrocious Amplify Learning program. You parents need to check that out. At the January 10th Board of Education meeting, my comments were muted on the playback video. As soon as I mentioned COVID tests collect DNA. So that's just some of the games they play. The Jefferson County Board of Education Incorporated has 3 primary functions. They make policies based on what parents and taxpayers want in the schools. They tell the administration what to do, and they hold them accountable. They listen to the public, and they tell the administration what we want, and then they explain the programs to the public. This is the American Rescue Plan. West Virginia got $1.5 billion with a B dollars in COVID taxpayer money. As of July the 15th, West Virginia got $1.5 billion in COVID tax money. But they didn't tell you that there were strings attached, requirements. Some of those requirements are rigorously advancing equity for all, including religious minorities, gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender individuals, especially in rural areas. That's the boonies, and that's us. Also, following CDC guidelines of masking our kids, COVID testing everybody, and eventually COVID vaccinating our kids. You know the CDC is a private for-profit corporation. It is not the federal government, right? So did this board explain any of this to the public? No. Did this board get feedback from any of the public? No. Did this board even mention how much money they got? No. So they sold us out, and they didn't even follow their own policies. In my opinion, a board who will do anything for a buck and knowingly withhold information from the people is exercising extremely poor judgment. And for that lack of judgment, you should all resign immediately. The future of our kids will not be dictated by weak-minded individuals with extremely poor judgment. Parents, pay close attention to those people defending poor judgment. Help is on the way. Vote next May the 10th.
And she'll be followed by Chelsea Jardina.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Krause, and I am the mother of 5 children, 3 of whom are enrolled in Jefferson County schools currently, unfortunately. I have been fighting this horrible mask mandate in our county schools for many, many months now. And what I now know is that you will not allow masking to be a choice for parents to make for their children. Not as long as you have any say in the matter. You have been given a thimbleful of power and you have abused it. Shame on each and every one of you. I know that this mask mandate is tied to federal money given to our schools, and that you care more about power and money than you do our children's well-being. I know that your Lord and Savior, Dr. Fauci, recently admitted that these masks do nothing to help people, but you continue to ignore the facts and the science that we have been telling you all along because it suits your agenda. I know that critical race theory is being taught to our children in Jefferson County schools, and I have proven it publicly. I know that your Marxist ideas about diversity, equity, and inclusion are intended to divide our children by race, class, and gender, and it is the basis for a political movement to promote a socialist agenda in our country. I know that our schools have been increasingly taking on the role of parent in our children's lives, and we must stop it and take responsibility for our children back. I know that you are the most untransparent and uncaring governmental body that I have ever experienced. And you should remember it is we the people that you work for. I know that there are I know that there are a few parents who disagree with me on these issues, but I also know that there are a lot more who agree with me. I pray you realize the mistakes you've made here, hang your heads in shame, and beg forgiveness from all of us, the parents, grandparents, and caregivers of the children that you are causing mental and physical harm to every day. I know that you will not stop inflicting your Marxist, socialist, political agenda on our innocent children until you are voted off of this board on May the 10th. What a wonderful day that will be. Thank
you. Jardina, followed by Jennifer Vigil.
Good job. Good job.
Can y'all hear me? Sorry. I am here today to speak for the third time regarding the mask mandate, but also the constant quarantines. My daughter was placed under a 10-day quarantine recently due to possible exposure in her class. She could have been back after 5 days, but was told she would have to wear a mask the entire time and would have to sit alone during the 5 extra days. I felt that it would make her more upset watching her friends eat with each other while my 6-year-old sits alone, because that will mess her up mentally even more than she already is because of this whole pandemic. During this quarantine, she was given no remote work, so for 10 days, no education virtually or in person. I know many students who have been quarantined multiple times since the beginning of school year. That's 10 days on multiple occasions of no education whatsoever due to possible exposure. When are we going to stop making our kids live in fear of something that is just as common as a cold? Regarding the mask mandate, it is no secret that it does not work. My daughter wore a mask all 8 hours first semester and ended up getting croup, bronchitis, and strep, along with 90% of her class at the same time. So how did masks prevent those viral illnesses? They did not. At times, the school board has made me feel defeated because of the fact they don't seem to care about the education of the students themselves. At this point, it's the Board of Education being spiteful. I am asking the Board of Education to prove us all wrong today by listening and lifting this very much pointless mask mandate, because honestly, legally, y'all don't even have the authority to do this in the first place. In the end, good always conquers evil, Choose wisely what side y'all want to be on before this election. Thank you. Good evening. I come to you tonight as a parent of 3 students who all attend Jefferson County Schools. I come to you again with fierce facts, not fierce opinions. Fact 1, none of the Board of Education members have a medical degree and have the ability to practice medicine that relates to children's health. Fact 2, it has been stated by the CDC that cloth masks are frequently worn by Americans who do not offer much protection as surgical masks or respirators. Why are we still masking our children? I can see you all right through my mask. Fact 3, depending on what school you attend, it will matter what your quarantine or isolation status is. There is no consistency in the county, and I could spend hours telling you facts about them, including my own children's experience. Just like Chelsea's, my son missed 3.5 weeks and got no education. Fact 4, the county protocols on our website have not been updated since October 2021. Since there have been new isolation and quarantine guidelines put in place per the CDC, our schools are following them. However, there's been no updated information. There are specifics in the protocol that even state that they will be revisited at the end of the first 9 weeks. And well, that hasn't happened. Why not? Dr. Reedy, fact 5, Dr. Reedy recently quoted in the journal, if someone tells a school nurse their child's home test is positive or the parent's home test is positive, we are now accepting that as good enough evidence. But 2 months ago, Dr. Reedy denied this. He also quoted, it's not the test is perfect test, but right now, anyone that has a positive at-home COVID test, I would say they have COVID. And at that point, the advice is to number 1, isolate from others. Dr. Reedy told me that home tests were not accurate and they would never be accepted. Why are we still letting Dr. Reedy make decisions for our county? Fact 6, mask mandates are causing an over 350% surge in childhood speech delays. And a recent article stated that prior to the onset of COVID, only 5% of clinic patients were in the age group, while today it stands at 20. It's very important for children to see your face when you speak. Fact 7, I will be told that as a parent, I'm being fierce in my opinion here. However, I'm fierce with these facts. The facts here are just a few. One last fact I will provide tonight is that this Board of Education truly doesn't look at the education of our children. The board has 3 primary functions and mandating masks is not one of them. The board is charged with the responsibility to articulate the aspirations and expectations citizens have for their schools. The second function is for the board to provide broad guidelines for directing administrative action and then holds the administrative team accountable for results. And third, the board fulfills a communication function between the educators and the public. Let the parents be the parents and make the proper choices for their children. And let the Board of Education make the proper decisions for our education. Stop ignoring the facts and listen to the parents. We are the parents, not you. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. I can get some of their changes to the consent agenda. No. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion?
Yeah. About number 9, out of the trips. I was just curious about this reward trip to Hershey Park, $1,500. I'm wondering, is that reimbursable if there's a COVID situation or, you know, it's pretty far in advance, I guess. Just wondering how that works. And are we, do we pay, is this for the bus? Is that what the $1,500 is for? I'm assuming that that's what the money is for.
Yes, ma'am, the $1,500 is for transportation to the park and a return trip. And they plan it out far in advance so transportation has enough time to secure buses. it is possible that Hershey Park may not even be open right now. They've delayed their opening a few times, so, but he did want to get the trip in time just so the transportation could plan for it.
So is there, I mean, is that locked in? Would we get the money back?
Yes,
And just curious about the reward. Do all of the schools get to go on the trip, or is it just the school?
each school has a little different setup as far as rewards and how they work it at their school. And this particular school, their end of the year reward trip is to Hershey Park.
Do all the children get to go?
I think that students have to meet certain criteria for behavior and expectations in order to attend.
It says 100 adults and 120 students. Is that for parents? Is that what all those?
That probably means that there are parents there attending also. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That trip is typically just for fifth graders. And
Yes, ma'am, that's a fifth grade trip.
yes, sir. All right, any other questions about the consent agenda? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, unfinished business. Action on approval of textbook adoption.
Need more time on that. We have 3 snow days and a holiday.
Mr. Banks?
Yes, ma'am, we've had a few days last week of snow. We were not in school on Monday, it was a holiday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the materials weren't open for the public to review. So we're asking that this be moved to the first meeting in February instead of tonight. So that the public has additional time to review the materials.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve or to delay the approval of textbook adoption until the February 14th meeting? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Ogden. And Mr. Banks, the textbook approval, that's a state mandated thing that comes up a certain period of time. We did not pick this time to approve textbooks.
No, it's all part of a cycle that the state has every 7 years. Each area is up for adoption, and counties are required to adopt the materials.
Correct. And the state provides options that we have to choose from. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it was a committee of teachers and educators that chose.
Yes, the policy is very, very clear that the teachers make these decisions. There's a committee of teachers that meet, and then they take the information back to their schools, and all the teachers vote, and whatever materials have the most votes, or the schools have the most votes, that's what we recommend to the board.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, so we have a motion on the table to delay the approval of the textbook adoption until the February 14th meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Gibson, new business. Jefferson County School Board bylaws and governance process.
Yes, ma'am. At the meeting before last, we went through with the board a timeline for our policy adoption process. We have been utilizing the Neola framework with Board Docs, which is a policy program which is searchable and allows individuals to go through chapter by chapter to do a search on particular terms for policy that they're looking at. It allows us to connect administrative guidelines to those. At the time, we showed you a schedule through which the different departments would review those guidelines, and like you as board, we are about to begin the process for the chapter that is the board's responsibility. So all of you have in front of you a paper copy of the templates that are used. And essentially what I want to do tonight is simply for the board to have some direction about the process of policy. So what you see in front of you and what's on the screen for people who are on Zoom is the electronic version that is online. And you'll note that this entire chapter, these are the bylaws of the board. And some of them, for each one of these sections, the choices that you have, for instance, boundaries, you have to define as a board what boundaries you're responsible for. So, you know, it says the blank school system is comprised of all the area in blank county. That's an easy one. You're not going to have very many choices. You represent Jefferson County Schools. There are, however, other areas in which you have choices. For instance, if you go down, if you go down to orientation and training, the state provides a number of different options. For instance, when you have a new board member, do you complete the orientation and training when their election is certified, or do you give yourself until their first regular meeting as a board member? So as you can see, there are a number of these. There are actually 75 pages of these. So what we wanted to do, just as we would do with any other committee, we provide you the templates in advance. You have an opportunity of several weeks to look through those, review what the choices are. As noted previously, all of these are vetted through legal and are guaranteed to be compliant with state legislation and with the Department of Education policy. I would recommend that the board consider having a special session just to go through the policy and make selections for the options that you have. It's a very large policy, and there are a number of alternatives. The board has the option of getting any support that they wish in terms of having someone from policy, someone from the West Virginia Department of Education, legal advisement. At the end of the day, even though the board completes the selection of these, it follows the same process as every other policy we have. It will, once you make recommendations to whatever process you want to use, it will still have to be posted up for public comment and input for at least 2 weeks before the board could then subsequently have a vote. So essentially, the only thing that I am doing tonight is introducing the material to you and asking for any guidance that you want or support that you want in order to be able to go through this process and make these selections.
I have a question. When is this due?
That's a good question, ma'am. It's not currently, there's no deadline except for the deadline that the board asked us to complete this by June the 30th so that we would begin the new school year with the entire policy in Neola and in board docs for the transparency to be able to search those and to link them through to forms. We know we have some frustration from the public when they can read a policy and it refers to a form and they have to go somewhere else and find it. This also allows us to link forms and administrative guidelines to the policy. Thank you.
My other question is, how are they enforced? Because I see a policy here that it's regularly not followed, not that it's a set policy, but I'm just curious, who enforces these?
Well, currently, ma'am, none of these policies are in place because you haven't completed them and voted on them yet.
Some of them we are already kind of expected and it's assumed and similar to policies that we have.
Some of them, yes, ma'am, certainly. If there's a place or a way in which you believe that someone's not following our policy, I certainly would appreciate you conveying that to me in a way that lets me follow up with those individuals and see. Currently, what I'd like to do is to have the entire board agree on a method for each one of you to go through those and have your input into how you'd like to make those selections and craft it, because we can only have one policy. It has to jointly represent all of them.
And these are not our policies, these are templates that Neola has provided.
Yes, ma'am. Those are the legally compliant templates.
do you think it would be helpful to have somebody from the Department of Ed come and help facilitate going through these policies? Or what would your recommendation be?
My recommendation would be that, number one, the board set a special session devoted entirely to these. And then, yes, certainly, if the board would take the individual paper ones back, read through them yourselves, and then if you have specific questions or areas in which you want some more information, then you could send those to me. I could have someone either in person or via Zoom join the board and for that special session and answer those questions. And again, you may have more than one session to work through these before you come to a conclusion to put it out for public comment. Once you make those selections, we will have to go in and actually do the operational work of putting it all together and post it out.
Also coming here for a training, and if so, could it coincide with, a question and answer opportunity to speak with him about these policy suggestions?
I can certainly ask him, and he is incredibly knowledgeable. He'd be a great person. Yes, ma'am. I will make that inquiry.
Would it be beneficial for us to take paper copies and write on them, make notes on them, and turn them all back in with an ink on them for you to compile them? Do you want to send us an electronic form that we fill it out, type it out, we can cut and paste and clear things where they need to be, and then go from there? What is your?
Well, again, we try to, just like with our students, we try to accommodate everyone's needs. Some folks prefer paper, some folks would prefer electronic. We are, as long as you get it back to us and allow us to collate it, it would be, again, however the information helps you process at that meeting, whatever that is. I can be on the laptop and go through and be making selections and corrections as you are talking and deciding. So the collating of it is more, you guys need to get on the same page. I'll worry about getting it all into the same format.
Well, how about we ask Mrs. Harder to schedule a meeting? I think we've got LSIC meetings coming up too. Okay. Well, why don't we look at the beginning of March? Coming up with a meeting then, does that work? Please.
And that will certainly give me time to contact Dr. Cole and see if there's any other support that I can provide as well.
And meanwhile, I think we should each individually go through and mark up so that we're prepared for that meeting. Any other questions or discussion on the process? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And while you're up there, do you have any superintendent comments for this evening?
I would actually echo, she must have read my notes, Ms. Joyce White. I'd like to thank the maintenance crew and the custodians who I spoke with several times during the week and were out doing some back-breaking work. And very, very, very grateful to them, as well as the fact that this county, unlike several others, has not and did not have to today, despite some fairly massive absences, have to rely on any parents to transport their kids. I know that Frederick, Loudon, and Washington County have all sent notices to parents on specific routes saying we can't transport your children today. If you can't do so yourself, then they'll have an excused absence, but an excused absence doesn't have a child educationally. So again, a huge shout out to our staff who are doing everything that they can to keep schools open right now. We deeply appreciate them. Our service staff in particular are doing an amazing job. Thank you.
I saw that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you back. I was just simply asking a question. I heard the same thing at Berkeley County as well. I think had canceled groups for students. It's helpful to be able to do. Thank you.
Mr. Paul, I just want to remind you that on July 6, 2020, we had a meeting to set the date and the location of all the board meetings. And I just don't know if we need to have an agreement, like a vote on this change of venue.
And that is certainly one of the things that the board will have to decide in their policy in terms of the location of their meetings at that.
Great, thank you. And then, is there an executive session for personnel?
Yes, ma'am, there is. And we anticipate action as part of it.
Okay. And what is the process this evening in our new venue?
So in this venue, the board will recess to the room for executive and then come back out into here for a vote.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into executive session for personnel? Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All in favor of going to executive session for personnel action, say aye. Opposed? Thank you.